She-Hulk Attorney at Law Episode 1 Breakdown and Ending Explained. Well, it's here, the first installment of the She-Hulk series that's had some anticipation for the past few months. With this being the most recent MCU TV series since Ms. Marvel, and I suppose the Groot series, and it containing one of the MCU's more controversial characters, let's jump into this first episode, recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from it. Here is She-Hulk Attorney at Law Episode 1 Breakdown and Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. So Episode 1 of the show saw us get introduced to Jennifer Walters, who's a lawyer who's just got her own office and is building her career, when she got into a situation that transformed her life and gave her the ability to turn into the Hulk. In the opening scene, we saw her about to go off on a case after practicing her closing statement on a case that we didn't really learn that much about. But from the ending, we know that it was a situation where people died due to substances that they encountered. But before she went off to the trial, we saw her acknowledge us as the audience with her breaking the fourth wall, which can often feel forced and out of place. But in this semi-sitcom style format, it actually worked and felt quite natural. And following that, we cut back to a couple of months ago where we saw how she got her powers of the She-Hulk and her origin. We saw that she was on a road trip with Bruce, who we know is her cousin, and at this point he had a prototype which enabled him to keep the Hulk at bay and stay as Bruce for an elongated period of time. We witnessed a spaceship which was confirmed as a Sarkaran Class 8 courier craft which landed in front of their car and essentially made them topple over and have an accident. The design of this ship was of one that was in Thor Ragnarok, and Bruce mentioned how they were most likely trying to deliver him a message. We heard nothing of the ship in the episode following that scene, but I imagine it's something that we'll see in future episodes. In the attempt to save Bruce, some of his blood got into Jen's system, exposing her to the gamma radiation, and thus She-Hulk was born. However, there were some slight differences between the pair. She was able to control when she turned into the Hulk, and also there was no split personality. It was just herself in the far larger, more aggressive, stronger and powerful form. Something Bruce didn't have the ability to do. This already showed some slight differences in the pair and led to a slight arrogance to be held by her. We witnessed Bruce training Jen within a lab that was built in Mexico by Tony Stark, and you could sense that when he mentioned his name, and how he said that he always joked about coming back and taking it away, that Bruce was upset that he was dead, as he paused in a moment of silence and reflection. There was initial resistance that we saw from Jennifer, due to the fact that she wanted to get back to her life as a lawyer and she didn't want to be a superhero, but that was something that was going to be unavoidable. Bruce stated how her life was never going to be the same, and that she couldn't go back to doing what she was doing before, but it seemed as though with her ability to be able to change as and when she pleased, she would have more control to be able to lead a normal life, or at least I feel that's what we're being led to believe in this moment. That could all change. There was a line that Bruce stated when he was in the lab, and it was, just regular anger means death and destruction for everything and everyone around you. And I'm telling you, when people start seeing you as a monster, that never goes away. I think this is one that is alluding to previous thoughts and opinions shared by the public of Bruce as the Hulk, but with the focus and importance that it had in this episode, I think it could be alluding to a perception that people are going to eventually think of Jen. I think she'll lose control at some point in the show, and it will cause the perception of the public to change, and she'll have to go on an arc of redemption. After we had the scenes in the lab, we witnessed Bruce train her with dialectical behavioral therapy, which was something she wasn't necessarily opposed to, but it felt like it essentially showed her ways of using her newfound powers, rather than being able to control her behavior, because this was something that she could essentially already do. So I didn't feel like she was really any different by the end of it compared to when she started. We had some humor that I thought felt a little out of place, in the sense that it felt quite forced and wasn't really that funny. Cheap humor about farting and drinking and had no real intelligence behind it. And then amongst all of that, we witnessed Bruce face off with Jennifer as she was about to leave. I found it quite hard to believe that a Hulk that has been in the Avengers for all of those years, faced off with Thanos, Loki, and many other villains, was taking critical hits from Jennifer, who'd only been a Hulk for a matter of days at that point. But I suppose they needed to show the strength that she held in some way. After we'd seen her go through all of the training and she left Mexico, we saw her about to embark on the case that we saw in the opening scene. This was when we saw Titania appear in the courtroom, causing disruption, and we saw Jen casually transform into the Hulk, where we saw her beat her with one punch. Titania is one of She-Hulk's largest nemesis from the comics. Her powers consist of super strength and enhanced stamina. She-Hulk was the first superhero that Titania fought when she got her powers, and this was the start of the rivalry between the pair. Although captured, I doubt she's going to be able to be contained for long. And just like in the comics, the rivalry will likely occur again in future episodes. I feel this episode served its purpose in the sense that we needed an episode that focused on the origin of She-Hulk, and to know how long she'd had the ability to transform, her relationship with Bruce, and to establish the time period and universe that she was in. Bruce was a character that I was a little disappointed with in this episode. This merging of Bruce and the Hulk is an interesting middle ground, but it just seemed hard to connect with the character. I don't know whether it's because of the lack of emotion on the face of the character, and a relatively stale delivery of the lines, but I much prefer Bruce just being Bruce and the Hulk just being the Hulk. I want to see the Hulk rage as we've not seen it in so long, but I do hope we get to see it at some point in this show. It seems as though she's an individual that fights for a voice in an industry where men treat her unfairly, and that seems like one of her main motivators, which is interesting to see. Especially that of her colleague who wants to take the limelight, and also the uncomfortable nature of when she's just out in public. I'm intrigued to see how Charlie Cox's Daredevil is going to tie into it, how her now being revealed as the Hulk to the people outside of her immediate family and her close friend is going to impact her career that she cares so deeply about, and also what's going to be the threat moving forward. Because all this first episode did was establish an origin, which I think was definitely needed. But with Titania and the ship also landing, I think the next episode will delve deeper into the wider threat that we're going to see throughout the whole of Season 1, and then start to build upon the story that we're going to see in the present day. The CGI was far better than anticipated, and it didn't feel uncomfortable to watch, which was a main fear of many out there following the release of the trailer. I think the show will get better as the episodes go on, and it's one that I'm looking forward to seeing how it gradually builds. So, there you have it. She-Hulk Attorney at Law Episode 1 Breakdown and Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos such as Endings Explained, theories and predictions, and character breakdowns, then click on the I button. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel where you'll find them all. If you want to give me a show or movie that you'd like me to review next, then head over to my Twitter, @BrainPilot_, and tweet me what show or movie you'd like me to review. And finally, if you'd like to see what I rate the movies that don't quite make the cut to getting a dedicated video, then head over to my Letterboxd profile. It's where I rate the latest releases in real time. What did you think of episode 1 of the show? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.